Good morning, everyone. This is the Citrus County Planning and Development Commission public hearing for August 17th, 2023. If you would like to join us at this time, I invite you to please stand for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear Lord, please give us the grace to be understanding, patient, and tolerant. With these attributes, we can conduct our work in a manner which will be pleasing to Thee, our county, and its residents. In the Lord's name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you would, please, for the courtesy of the applicants, the board, and those in the audience, silence any devices at this time. May we have the roll call, please?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning.
Good morning.
The following Planning and Development Commission members are present this morning. Stacy Worthington, Chair. Richard Barnes, First Vice Chair. Robert Bass. David Bramblett. Michael Facemeyer. Alternates Carol Scragg. And School Board Representative Chuck Dixon.
Thank you. If any person decides to appeal any decision made by the commission with respect to any matter considered at this hearing, he or she will need a record of the proceedings, and for such purpose, he or she may need to ensure that a verbatim record of the proceedings is made, which record includes testimony and evidence upon which the appeal is based. During the public import portions of the meeting, individuals are given 3 minutes and representatives of an organization are given 5 minutes. When anyone wishing to speak comes to the podium, please complete a yellow form and hand it to the recording secretary. Please print your name, address, and the number of the application for which you are speaking on the form. The yellow forms can be found at the podium by the door. If representing an organization, a letter of authorization must accompany the speaker or be on file. Comments will be limited to the topic being heard. Please state your name and give your address for the taped record. At this time, we will open to the public. This is an opportunity to speak before the board on any matter that is not an application we'll be hearing today. Anyone? Going once, twice, 3 times, seeing none. We do have minutes to approve.
I move that we approve the minutes of June 15th, 2023 as submitted.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Facemeyer,
Second that.
a second by Commissioner Barnes. All in favor, say aye. Oh, yeah.
I have a comment.
Sorry,
on
discussion.
Page 5. In the second paragraph, it begins with regard. In the last sentence, I think that should say provided by Waste Management and not provided about Waste Management. Thank you.
Okay, commissioners, will we have the motion to approve the minutes with the changes? Commissioner Facemeyer?
Yes.
Yes,
I'm good.
and
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes. Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 7-0. Okay, staff announcements.
Yeah, we posted on the board that CU 2023-00001, a self-storage site, has withdrawn. That will probably be back before you as part of a larger PUD. So we don't have that one today. You have a new face over there. I told you Cheryl Burton is now a coordinator along with Liz. So you might see them alternating sometimes. And this is Carissa Faulkner Cable. I hope I'm saying all that right. Who has taken Cheryl's job, and she's been here and keeps coming back for several weeks, so we're happy to have her. I will go over some of the upcoming meetings, but we'll do that at the end of the agenda.
Alrighty, thank you. Welcome. Glad to have you. Ex parte communications, Madam Attorney?
With regard to the applications before you, have you had any ex parte communications you need to disclose for the record? And we'll start with Mr. Dixon.
No, ma'am.
None.
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 Site visits.
Site visit to 2023-0003.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. If the applicant is present for CPA-AA-2023-00003, Could you please come to the podium?
And today, the county is the applicant for both applications. It's
Oh.
unusual. I would not have had this meeting if this happened, but we had a couple things continued, not just the most recent one.
I
So
didn't know
here
if
we are.
Mr. Stillwell,
It's our start.
he's not saying anything?
Yeah, oh, you know he will. This is a request that he asked for with the county commission and also with this board long ago. So that's why he's here, and I know he'll have input.
Okay, great. May we have the introduction?
CPAAA 2023-00003, Citrus County Growth Management for Morton.
That's it, yeah. Really didn't do a coordinator one because we are the applicant, period. So this is kind of a blend. So what this is not a zoning change. This is actually, I know it's a CPAAA, but this is a request to add a site into the State Route 44 interchange management area. So they're not changing per se. They're part of Crystal Oaks PUD. They have to stay part of Crystal Oaks PUD. This will allow them to be in that IMA, and I'll show you that in a moment. So there's the IMA, the yellow outline. You can see that they do abut it to the north. They do not actually quite touch 44, but they have a pinpoint. So they are abutting the IMA itself, but they are not part of the IMA. We did not include Crystal Oaks because it is a residential community. They weren't considered as part of the IMA. This site is undeveloped on the PUD. It is for single-family residential and a wastewater treatment plant, which I don't think was ever constructed or is offline if it was. So this is a zoom into the site. You can see that it does abut Crystal Oaks. It's part of Crystal Oaks, and it abuts the IMA, very close to the parkway itself. And zooming out to let you see it with the land uses, it is RMU and PDR. It's part of the master plan. That will not change with this application. You'll see in the backup that the applicant has requested this inclusion because they're thinking this is a great site for multifamily. If multifamily is proposed here, that is going to be a change before you and the county commission. There's no multifamily in Crystal Oaks. So Crystal Oaks would either have to amend their PUD or they'd have to pull out of the PUD and do a zoning change before you to something like high-density residential or something like that. But this would allow them to take advantage of the interchange management concept, which just got approved from the board the last meeting. Basically, what that says is that they're bound by the rules of the PUD. But if they want to change, then they go into that IMA thing where you have some ability to do non-res or travel related. Now the commissioners took out the idea of truck stops. They didn't like that in this location. So a travel center, but without the truck capacity type thing that you see maybe at the racetrack up the street. So travel store, but not that kind. Hotels, restaurants, the small things that you would expect to see near the parkway. And a zoom into this particular site. So it is staying RMU. There's the parkway right next to it and a couple residential lots that no doubt are impacted from the parkway. And this is looking towards 44. The site is on the right. It is entirely vacant, undeveloped. This is on Crystal Oaks. And this is looking the other direction into Crystal Oaks. As I said, this is still part of the PUD. It would have to come through an entirely different hearing to come out of that. And nothing else. Can you get me back? I'm sorry, I pushed the wrong button. All right, so there are no conditions here. This is simply to try to add that particular site into the interchange management area. It is 25.4 acres in size.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the board?
I have questions.
Commissioner Bramlett?
Speak a little bit more about if we added this to the IMA, the commercial aspect.
Right, so it doesn't change the zoning. They're still
Right.
bound by the PUD. They're still single family and utility tanks. But if they wanted to do multifamily if they wanted to do something more, they would have to either come out of the PUD, amend the PUD to allow multifamily. Now, there are some commercial zonings in the PUD, so they could come back and ask for commercial in the PUD. But if they want multifamily, they'll probably have to come out of that PUD and come before you with some kind of density change, some kind of zoning change.
So basically, we're just adding it to the IMA, but anything that they wanted to do to it aside from single-family residential would have to come in front of the board,
Aside from what's currently on the PUD, yes. Yes, it
which
would.
is single-family lots,
Which
80
is single,
homes.
up to 80, right, with that plant. Part of it is completely dedicated to that utility plant, and the rest is residential.
Okay.
It is a conceptual, but you get an idea where the plant is. It's on that southwest area. Yeah, the IMA gives them incentives. There's some carrots if they do want to do a zoning change for multifamily and commercial, but it's not, they still have to go through the process.
I mean, I think commercial on that property is incompatible.
And they're not asking for that, but yeah,
Right.
understood.
I'm just talking
understood.
about for future reference.
Right, so this will stay in the PUD if they want to do a zoning change, then they'll be encouraged to do something more like multifamily and commercial rather than single family if they do a zoning change.
Any other questions from the board? Looks like none. Okay. At this time, the public portion of the meeting will now be open. If there is anyone present in favor of the application who would like to speak, please come forward to the podium. As a reminder, individuals have 3 minutes to speak and organizations have 5 minutes. When speaking on this application, please address the board. If you have any documents you want to be entered into the record, please provide a copy to the recording secretary.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Clark Stillwell. I represent Mr. Morton. I specifically asked for this inclusion in the IMA. If you recall the hearings and your backup materials, I submitted multiple maps trying and urging that the IMA district move away from its current linear design and provide for additional depth in the IMA area, similar to what you saw at Cardinal Street. Right now, the existing IMA is very linear. It splits lots both at the ends of the IMA. It splits lots, and also it splits lots as to depth. The existing IMA that got approved, and you can see it in your map, the good news is it generally follows lot lines so that there's no split of a parcel. Now, within that IMA, if memory serves me right, there are approximately 80 to 90 parcels or lots of record, okay? The minimum lot size for the IMA that you approved and the board approved is 5 acres, but you can go to 3 acres if you increase the ISR. We put that flexibility in. In this particular IMA, there are only 3 parcels that are greater than 5 acres. So with additional depth, you get greater site plan flexibility, and greater site plan flexibility means the mixed use incentives that you find in the IMA text can be implemented. Otherwise, you're kind of stuck with this lineal 400-foot depth of what I'm going to call has led to a great deal of strip commercial type zoning. So that was one of the reasons that I thought this parcel should be included. It has added site plan flexibility to the total IMA area. There is central utilities now, so the wastewater treatment site plan in the existing PUD is a non-existent thing. Won't happen, shouldn't happen. With the parkway and the location next to it, the idea of this being phase 4 of Crystal Oaks is pretty much off the books. You can see why just from what's occurred. Frankly, it's been vacant for a long, long time. Now, the IMA text requires that all of the uses that implement it are PUD now. So don't lose sight of that fact. What that means is, as Joanna outlined, these folks, if they want to do something different than phase 4, they're going to come back and vacate the Crystal Oaks PUD phase 4 on the property. And then they're going to propose a new PUD for whatever use they intend. And Mr. Bramman, I agree with you 100%. This is not appropriate for commercial use, and my client understands that. It is proximate, and we've always talked about the transition between single family and commercial and how you might want to have office and or multifamily. And just looking at the site and looking at the fact that Crystal Oaks Drive is there, a major collector, and you got the Suncoast intersection, and you're going to have on the 44 area, okay, you're going to have a significant amount of commercial type uses, and those uses need places for people to live proximate to them with walkability and accessibility. So that's why we asked for it. I think my client gets the potential of the IMA benefit uses, but also be cognizant of the fact that he'll be subject to the IMA LDC design standards, which in the case of Cardinal, which you approved, are much more, I don't want to say well, they're certainly a lot more than the current LDC, and they deal with issues of aesthetics, and they deal with issues of architectural control, which the current LDC does. So if and when they want to do something, they will face those architectural and aesthetic type issues that are in the IMA LDC regs, similar to Cardinal. So that's it. Very simple. 3 minutes.
Supposed to be, but he gave you longer. I don't know why. Thank you.
I tried.
Anyone else in favor of the application? Anyone? Okay, seeing none. Anyone opposed to the application, please come to the podium. Anyone? Once, twice, 3 times? Okay, we'll close the public portion of the meeting and bring the discussion back to the board.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Bass.
for purpose of a motion, the Plan and Development Commission finds application number CPA AA 2023-00003 consistent with the Citrus County Comprehensive Plan and Citrus County Land Development Code, and that the board recommends approval of the application to the Board of County Commissioners based upon the evidence and testimony presented in the staff report and conclusions regarding this petition.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Bass and a second by Commissioner Facemeyer. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carries 7-0.
And Madam Chair, this is scheduled for the October 10th commission meeting.
Thank you. Okay. The county for CPA / AA-2023-00004.
That's our new computer system, so there you go.
more numbers.
They're like, we can't do less than 5. We're like, oh, we don't want these. It didn't matter. We had to fight for the CPA AA
Do we
to
have
stay.
to say the 0000?
I think so. Yes, because we're going to have 20,000 in there. Oh God, ignore I said that. That would be really bad.
You'll still be here.
We had to fight for the CPA AA to stay in. They didn't want it. They wanted to just give us numbers, and Joe and I both kicked and screamed for a long time till we got that. So. Anyway, so we are the applicant for this. This is a zoning change for approximately 14.2 acres to change from PSI, public, semi-public institutional, to general commercial with a PUD for a proposed animal shelter. It's been in the news a lot. I'm sure you knew that the animal shelter is pending. And we do have the community services director and the animal shelter director, who I have not met, and I apologize, but they are here for questions, and they can help out if you have anything like that. So the animal shelter is proposed on Woodland Ridge Drive. This is just down the street from here, a little farther north on the Canto Highway. The jail is right there on the right side of the picture, so you can see this side. It's quite large. Not all of it would be used for this. And there is an existing tower there and also an existing storage yard for the sheriff. So there's some stuff already here. This is the zoning. Now, PSI is public, semi-public institutional. It's meant for county places. It's also meant for schools. It's used for churches. So that kind of institutional stuff. But one of the uses in the PSI is veterinary offices. It's been there for a while. I think I just took it out with the last amendment. But I suppose they thought it's institutional. That's good. It's not really. But one of the things it says is veterinary offices with no outside kennels. Okay, we know the animal shelter is proposing some outside kennels. They have them now, they want them again. So that's why PSI won't work here. So we're proposing GNC with a PUD, with a very specific PUD. So this is the conceptual plan that they're giving. You're not being asked to approve this. Just at a glance, you can see it really doesn't meet Land Development Code standards as far as parking, as far as buffers, circulation, that kind of thing. It's not here. And they know that. The architect has some work on this. This is certainly not a final approved plan. I think I've heard something like 30% concept, and I'm sure they can correct me if that's wrong. So this is just an idea of what they're thinking here. But if approved, so what this would propose with an animal shelter with outside kennels and accessory uses may also contain other governmental uses, such as a government office, maintenance building, and emergency services facilities. So it is fairly specific, but a little bit conceptual, because I don't know what's going to be used 10 years down the road. But if you're able to zoom in on here, you'll see a meeting room is proposed as one of the concepts. Some other things like that. They have an intake for the animal shelter, not truly the animal shelter, but an intake. So things like that. If the sheriff wants to expand that equipment yard, that storage yard, I didn't want to impede that. So that's why this is a little bit general, but it is government uses, maintenance buildings, and related uses like that. So this is the adjacent residential lot to the south. This is the one thing that you'll see in the conditions. There is a deviation proposed. For buffers, what would be required here between a shelter like this and a residential lot would be a 25-foot type D with a wall. Okay, we all know how great walls are, and we've waived those at times. This is a very, very long buffer strip here. There it is right there, the tree line, and it extends very far back to this farm. This farm also abuts the jail. So I think a wall here would actually probably be a little too imposing. Staff is suggesting a type D without a wall be maintained here. Perhaps something more than that if kennels are proposed up against it for noise, but it's already a working farm, so. Oops, I did it again, Liz, I'm so sorry. I keep going too far. So what's proposed here are 9 conditions. The existing tower would remain. The existing fenced storage area for the sheriff would remain. Buffers would be as required in the LDC, except for the type D without the wall on the southern property. And it's encouraging existing vegetation to remain. They are going to have central potable water and sanitary sewer. You'll see on this plan, there's no proposal to come off of 491. This would come off of Woodland Ridge. They would have to do cross access to the north. Cross access from the back up, pedestrian access along 491, buffers along 491, a bio survey because it's more than 5 acres. And there are some things from technical services such as a turn lane warrant analysis. I know it's a county project, but we're still going to try to follow the rules on that. So that's it. Proposing it for the animal shelter.
Pardon me. Try to follow the rules, or we will follow
We will
the rules?
absolutely follow the rules. There have been past years where that might not be able to be said, but I am never saying that. And no, we will follow the rules. Thank you. She keeps me on my toes.
Thank you, Joanna. Any questions from the board?
I have a question.
Commissioner Bramlett.
I'm not sure I agree with no wall.
Okay.
There's going to be outside kennels, barking dogs. We all know what that's going to create. I understand that that is a farm now, but in the future it may not be a farm. They may try and do something different there. So that property owner already owns that property and knows what it's zoned and what can be there. The county comes in, they get a deviation, which when we say deviation, I know how we've been as a board with deviations, especially with the whole wall and fence thing. Barking dogs along that side of the fence line right there, that, like, in my opinion, that diminishes his property value for residential, putting residential properties on that property sometime in the future. I just want to know what you think about that.
Yeah, okay, understood. That was something that I mentioned in the staff report too, is noise is certainly a concern here. I think a wall would be, I hate to use the word expensive, that's not the only reason, but it would be a lot and an intrusion in this particular area. I think if that is a concern of this board, we might be looking at something, maybe an increased setback. Instead of a 25, a 35, or a 40, or something larger.
10 feet doesn't do anything for barking dogs, though.
Yeah, but you're going to have, I don't know how to fix that because people build next to vet hospitals and stuff too, but I agree.
It's not a shelter.
Right.
10 or 15 kennels out back is much different than what they're proposing right there that I can see.
Yeah, and I don't know if a wall is really going to do a lot either, but I understand the outside kennels can maybe move toward Woodland Ridge more, but I know they're trying to give some privacy too on the way to the jail. We can ask the experts here on this and get their input on that.
And then the other thing that I would just want to sort of like inquire about is we're saying that this is a 30% conceptual plan. I know in the past when we've had PUDs, we've sort of frowned on not having, like, we don't really know what's going to be there. So we're trying to approve a PUD, and I'm just trying to make sure that we're treating everyone fairly across the board, whether it be the county or whether it be somebody out in the public.
Understood, and I agree with that to the most part. I don't want too much that I have to see them again the next year. That's not preferable if it's that tight. But I agree that there are some that we've seen with just uses listed. Sometimes those are fine, sometimes they're not.
So you're okay with what they have conceptualized on here? If somebody from the public came in and said, I want to change this to GNC, here's my conceptual plan, it's about 30% concept.
I think if it wasn't PSI, yes. If it was residential to commercial, I would probably be bulking. Because this
Okay.
is already a government type orientation, I already know a government building's gonna go here.
A government building would be much less trafficked and frequented and outside external noise than this particular use would be, in my opinion as well. I think that we should be very cognizant of the south property on this particular decision.
Okay, understood. We'll get some input then. I'm gonna put you on the spot in a little bit, so, okay.
Commissioner Bass, did you have something?
Yeah, Dave kind of hit on it. I was concerned about the overall approval, because in one of your comments, G on page 6 of 7, says the master plan is conceptual in nature and should be able to meet LDC requirements for buffers and design standards. So
sorry,
I'm-
can you?
I apologize.
Record these, so.
I apologize.
And replay them,
All right,
rebroadcast.
so on page 6 of 7 of your findings, letter G, your final comment says the master plan is conceptual in nature and should be able to meet LDC requirements for buffers and design standards. So you feel that, as Dave said, that this is gonna be okay? Because it could change considerably, like the location of those outdoor kennels. Why aren't they closer to the buildings themselves that would kind of follow to what Dave said? At least you'd have a little more spacing. So I have some concerns with this concept plan, because I don't think he's dotted all the i's and crossed all the t's. I realize it's our project, but
No, yeah, I totally agree with you on that. That's why my comments are in here, is that the condition is the use and not this plan. Because, yeah, this plan doesn't meet land development code. It's very clear it doesn't. We're trying to get to a point where the zoning is in place, and then the plan is gonna have to meet land development standards. We can't waive them for ourselves.
right.
So, with the exception of the one with the wall, perhaps. Nothing else is being requested for a deviation, so they're gonna have to meet it. I agree with you, this plan isn't gonna cut it for LDC. The use itself here, an animal shelter off of Woodland Ridge near the jail, yeah, absolutely seems to be acceptable.
Okay. All right, thank you.
But point well taken, and I think the people that are gonna be running this place, can probably give some input too, and I'm sure they're listening to your comments.
Any other questions from the board?
I'm gonna call up, Mr. Head, or whoever you'd like to have discuss. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm glad you left that up there, and in fact, we were on the phone call yesterday.
Introduce yourself,
Oh,
please.
my apologies. Eric Head, Community Services Director. You can see what you mentioned with the kennels to the south. We're already doing everything we can. This is not we just reached 30%. When we submitted this one, we weren't at 30% yet. This is actually being shifted as far to the north as we can. And one of the things we talked with Joanna when we were discussing the wall to the south, not just the size of the wall, but our goal is to leave as much existing trees as possible, especially on that south line. There are a lot of specimen oaks in that area. There are a ton of things that we want to leave. And I don't know how much that works with them, but we would definitely be trying to create as much of a barrier between those south kennels and the property line. And remind me of your other specific question. You had a couple.
We were just talking about the plan, and
Yeah.
you already mentioned that.
Yes. And some other changes that are being done, the additional parking to the left is shifting. We know that, like, you see that there's two entrances. Most of it is being shifted up to the northeast, with only one entrance much further away from 491. And so also, and Colleen could probably speak more to noise abatement than I could. It's also a consideration for staff. So we're very cognizant of the fact that we need to keep noise levels down as much as possible. The kennels are open, but they're also enclosed, if that makes sense. Right now, we're looking at kennels that at nighttime, they will be closed. There's basically doors on all around those kennels. During the day, they could be more open air, so that's why they're being considered. They're full structured buildings, But they have larger roller doors at this point, which open up and create an open air environment in some of those kennels. Anything to add, Colin?
So for noise abatement, do you have any ideas or suggestions? You talked about closing the doors at night.
Yeah, the doors would certainly be closed at night and for security. And then I think the biggest thing at this point is as much vegetation between those, on that southern property line as possible, or whatever is required. I think Joanna mentioned it. We're going to do whatever is required and needed as once we get to that point. We're just so early in the process now at 30% that we haven't quite got this designed exactly as it's going to lay on the facility. You did ask a question why the buildings were where they are. The angle, and you see the between the main administrative building and area, and then of course the kennels to the south, those will actually be yards. So for the animals to run and play, there'll be like 3 or 4 different animal yards where they can be outside during the day, take walks, do that sort of thing. Correct? Play yards, basically. They wouldn't all be out there at the same time, but animals rotate in and out with volunteers.
Eric, why are you guys asking for the zoning change now before you have a more complete plan?
Time frame, I think we wanted to get this as set as possible, coming before you now, and then maybe go before the board in October. And then we plan to hopefully be at 100% by January, and breaking ground hopefully by late spring. That's our current timeline.
Go ahead.
So I'm counting there's the 3 kennels on the south side.
Yes,
Each of those tiny little squares, is that 1 kennel?
yes, and I can
So-
give you the capacity.
There's roughly 100 kennels.
Is he saying they're not?
Could you come up to the mic and then?
Yes, come on
Yes,
up, Colleen,
please.
introduce yourself.
I'm Colleen Yarbrough, Animal Services Director. So you'll see the squares are divided in half.
Yes.
So one kennel has 2 halves.
So there's 38 little squares that I just counted on one
So-
right-hand side of that first jut down there on the left-hand side.
It's 40 kennels per the 2 twin buildings. And then the third building, there's 20 kennels in there, but those are fully enclosed kennels.
Plus a future 10 more kennels. So we're looking at 50, about 100 kennels right there between those two plans. And then roughly 20 over there all the way on the right with another 20 quarantine kennels proposed.
Those would be for future expansion as the county needs.
Right, so 150-ish kennels. Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Has any
Commissioner Bass?
consideration been given to moving those kennels to that, I guess it'd be more towards the northeast corner where you got that big empty spot there, so you're farther away from those potential properties on the southern boundary line, so that noise issue might be lessened for any future residents there?
One of the things, that's a great question. One of the things that the architect has been working on, you see that box right in the middle of that open area where it kind of comes
There's a
together?
pointer, Eric, there's a pointer right there.
Oh, perfect.
That's a DRA, isn't it?
Yeah, well,
You have to hold it. There you go.
there's the DRA. Right there's the tower.
Yep.
That tower's so tall, they're trying to keep as much of the
Yeah, the
facility
falls
itself
out.
outside of if that tower were to fall in a storm. They've got the radius of the tower, and they're trying not to have any buildings inside the radius of that tower.
Our code actually requires that for towers. They can't have structures unrelated to the tower within the fall zone.
That's why he's doing it. That's it.
There you
All
go,
right.
there's a reason.
All right.
Any other questions from the board? All right.
I'll just tell you while you're in front of us for the respect is I think that the wall should be there
Okay.
with 150 kennels in the future proposed. I mean, I just think for the neighboring property to the south, whether it's a farm now or whatever, we all know what's happening in Citrus County. I know that the cost isn't, but we tell people of the public, we don't make decisions based on cost. We make decisions based on what's best.
Understood.
Okay?
Yes.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Commissioner Bramlett. Okay, at this time, we will open the public portion of the meeting. If anyone is present, which I don't really see very many people in the audience, if anyone is present who'd like to speak on the application, please come forward now. Anyone going once, twice, three times? Okay, we're gonna close that and bring the discussion back to the board. Commissioner Bramlett, we heard some of your thoughts. Do you have anything else you want to share?
No, I mean, aside from the fact I think it's a little premature that they're here because, you know, people from the public, we would not be as acceptable to them coming here with a 30% conceptual plan. And I understand the need for the timeline, but everybody has a timeline.
Okay, thank you.
I just have a question. If we approve this today, which I intend to vote in favor of, this application, would we see this again, or this just?
This is a zoning
We
change for
hand
a
it off.
PUD, so you would be recommending something to the commissioners. If they wanted to change it substantially like any other PUD, it would have to come before you again. But otherwise, no, it would go to building permit.
So if they just tweak this a little bit, county commissioners would make the
Well,
decision.
yeah, you're not being asked to vote on this plan. This was provided because it's what I had, but as Izzy's talked about, you know, there's definitely a work in progress.
No, I think we all understand that.
Yeah, so you would not see it again unless they want a substantial change to the PUD itself.
Okay.
It would be required to meet LDC standards based on these conditions.
Thank you, Commissioner Facemeyer. Anyone else like to say something?
I'd just like to say that I don't think a wall's necessary. I mean, this is the county building. They can always add a wall later if there's a problem. That's just gonna add cost to the project and maybe affect whether or not it gets built. I mean, we're talking about a county building. They can always add a wall later if they have that kind of problem.
I just don't think the county gets special consideration. We've had many people come here in front of us, and the walls have been discussed, and we've kicked it around. Some of them where it didn't really seem where it was needed as much. But I just think in this particular pitch, and this is just my opinion, I've only heard one person say it, so I'm just gonna let you know what I think because that's just what I do.
That's what you're here for.
Thank you, Commissioner Bramlett, Commissioner Dixon. I don't want to weigh in on the wall thing just quickly. I actually agree with Commissioner Dixon, but not, I mean, I like the idea of keeping the natural buffer and not including the wall. And as far as this conceptual project and plan, I mean, I would have liked to have seen the actual design, but at the same time, the timeline is very important. This project's been something this county has been trying to get off the ground for a very long time. They're out of space over at the current facility, and we really need to move this project forward, and that's why we'll vote in favor of this application today. Anybody else?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Bass?
I understand your point, I understand Dave's point, but I'm a little disappointed that we are looking at a plan that is still such a thinly drawn document. And they're expecting us to make a pretty big decision on a very expensive project for the county. And we really don't have a full picture of what this thing is gonna look like. It could significantly change as they continue to move forward as far as how the layout is, just based on what Mr. Hurd said, Head, thank you. You know, they're gonna be changing the entrance, they're gonna be moving some of the parking, they might be moving the kennels. I mean, it could look significantly different from what we approve. And I think that we as the Planning and Development Commission should have the opportunity to look at what the plan will really look like at the end. You know, minor tweaks I can deal with, but it sounds like this is gonna be a significant change, and I don't think it's right for us not to have a look at what the final plan is gonna be. So I'm torn as to whether to vote in favor or not. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Commissioner Scragg?
If we put a fence, would they be taking down part of the trees to put the fence or the wall?
They would take down trees to put up a fence just as they would take down trees to put up a wall, in my opinion.
Well, I'd hate to see trees come down for any reason.
You
Madam
have
Chair?
something?
I just wanted to say, I understand your many of your comments, but remember, you're not being asked to approve a plan development. You're being asked to make a zoning change.
Thank you, Madam
So
Attorney. You have more? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I thought you were done.
I thought perhaps maybe you'd been watching the BOCC meetings.
No, I mean, you stopped. I thought you were done.
That was a pause.
Pause, okay, long pause. Okay.
I think some of them are too long. So and I understand the concern because many times we say on this board says that it doesn't want to do zoning changes without a planned development. So I feel where you all are because, those issues have come up before, but it is what it is before you.
So we will definitely have zero opportunity to see this again if we approve this today.
I believe you won't see it again.
All right, thank you.
But your conditions are that it has to comply with land development code.
I understand that, but again, I feel our duty is to see what things are going to look like generally. And I think there's just so much possible change to this that I just find it hard. I feel like we're not having our opportunity to really take a bite of the apple into what the final plan will look like. So,
The reminder that the existing zoning is PSI, which allows quite a bit of things. It could allow a hospital, it could allow the jail, which is already there. So they've got a lot already. Just unfortunately, it prohibits outside kennels. For whatever reason, it allows hospitals but no outside kennels. So you're not being asked to change. The PSI zoning is pretty important. It's already existing, but your comments are well taken. Thank you. This is why
I
we
would say
appreciate
that
you.
it probably doesn't allow it because it's a loud nuisance. That's why. Everyone knows that
I think the jail is also pretty loud.
You think that it's as loud as 150 kennels
I have
outside?
no idea. Not
Right,
gonna
I have
debate
never attended it, so I don't know either, but
we're glad, Dave.
yeah.
That you want to admit.
And the only other thing I'll
full
tell you is
disclosure.
that I
I'm
just
sure-
feel kind of weird, like just saying we're going to approve this because I know that there's going to be additional scrutiny on this, and this feels like an incomplete plan to me
Okay.
with some deviations that we wouldn't if somebody that wasn't part of the county was in front of us. That's why I think that this needs additional scrutiny, in my opinion, because then what's going to happen is if somebody gets on YouTube, they watch it and they go, oh, they did that with the county. They deviated with the wall there. Supposed to have been a wall. They came in there with a 30% conceptual plan. I'm going to roll in there with mine and I'm going to say, oh, look, but you did this for the county. Kind of like over there where the other veterinary clinic is, where the county transit building is, and it's supposed to have cross access and there is no cross access there. Right? Because we've had that talked about too. So that's just kind of where I feel with it. And I'm just speaking. I want the shelter. I know that it's a need. Everything that everybody comes in front of us is a need though. It's a need to them.
Are you all through?
No,
No, I'm talking to the attorney
Oh.
because
She's
or do you have more thoughts?
taking breaths.
Is this a long pause?
I was just going to tell Commissioner Bramlett that I'm sure Colleen would love you to volunteer at the shelter sometime.
See how loud it is?
I have kids with animals, so we actually keep ours. I'm doing you a favor.
Yes, I'm done, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. The Planning and Development
Excuse me,
Commission,
Madam
I'm
Chair.
sorry, I have the floor. The Planning and Development Commission finds application number CPA/AA-2023-00004 consistent with the Citrus County Comprehensive Plan and the Citrus County Land Development Code, and that this board recommends approval with conditions of the application to the Board of County Commissioners based upon the evidence and testimony presented at the staff report and the staff report and the conclusions regarding this petition. So we have a first by myself,
Second.
a second by Commissioner Scragg, I think, first, and now any further discussion, Commissioner Bass.
I was just wondering if the county had ever looked at making them fully enclosed kennels instead of having half open and half closed.
Joanna, can you answer that?
I cannot, but I'll defer to, what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, and I believe, and Colleen can correct me if I'm wrong, one of the problems, the one that will be fully enclosed is the one on the far right. That's an isolation kennel and will have full AC everything. These other two kennels are larger. And if you were to walk to the current kennels now, they are basically fully enclosed, but the ventilation and the heat is not sustainable. So we have to try to create as much open air and ventilation in those kennels as possible. So that's where we are with that. So it was considered, but Air conditioning, HVAC for all the kennels was cost prohibitive.
Thank you, Eric.
Yep.
Any further discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is that 4? And opposed, say nay.
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 Okay, so motion carries 4-2. And also to the recording secretary, I realized about 25 minutes ago that there were only 6 of us here today. So if you could amend my earlier statements, that motion's carried 7-0. Thank you.
I didn't catch that, so good job. All right, so this application is also proposed on October 10th before the Board of County Commissioners. So just a couple things, and then obviously you guys can chime in too, but I wanted to let you know what's upcoming. This Board of County Commissioners is finding their way, and they're wanting to make changes to the Land Development Code and the Comprehensive Plan. So I am drafting those as fast as my little hands can. So you will be seeing some major changes coming before you in the coming months and year. It's going to take some time. So just warning you on that, but also just wanted to appreciate y'all that you're not faced with the entire room today, but you have been a lot, and you're going to be again with some of the ones that are coming down the pike. And I appreciate that. I know it's great to make the room happy and look like heroes, but you also, you seem to think of the Land Development Code in the county, and sometimes that's against the room and get the hisses and the boos, but I think y'all do a good job on looking at this. I know the Chronicle says planners consider. You're not planners, and I'm glad you're not. You're realtors, you're engineers, you're business people, and you're very much appreciated for what you do. And I appreciate the thought you give on each application. I may not always agree with the comments that you make, but that's why you're here. Okay, I appreciate that, and I just wanted to say that because I don't think you get a lot of recognition and a lot of appreciation. It's hard when there's a room full, and we don't have it today, so I can say this stuff. But good job, guys. I appreciate it. It's only going to get. It's as busy, and the commissioners are pumping the brakes a little bit on some of our requirements and some of our growth. And so you're going to see that ahead of time. But your input is so important on that kind of stuff because you see it day by day. Now, just to pass on, September 7th, our next meeting, you've got right now 4 applications. I don't think that's changed. So Joe will be running it because Mr. Landon and I will be at a conference, but I know you guys are being best behavior for Joe. And then coming up on the second meeting in September, we did have one particularly large application. I think that might be continued. We might have 2 on there, and continuing 2 and 3 and 2 and 3. And then in October, you'll see the first of many changes to Land Development Code that are coming.
Thank you, Joanna, very much for your kind comments.
Appreciate
We really
it, yes.
appreciate it very much. Board, if you will indulge me for just a moment, since we did have a quick meeting. Joanna, I had a question for you. I don't know if you can answer this or not, but there's been a lot of discussion in my district about Airbnbs. And so basically, the county doesn't have, and this might be a tag team effort, the county doesn't really have a lot of strict regulations on what's happening with Airbnbs, Venmos, and things like that. But essentially, would that not be commercial activity taking place within residential neighborhoods, right next door to a budding residential? And
I know you do.
Please.
I got
This
this.
is a statute thing, so
I got this.
Oh, okay.
So I will tell you, stay tuned because the issues that you've raised have been raised to some commissioners, and I know that there's some interest on the commission to address some issues. And I suspect that will be on the next Board of County Commission meeting, not the one that's not next Tuesday, but perhaps the following one. And the commissioners are cognizant of the issues. But the commission's hands are tied somewhat because state law preempts local governments from regulating or I'm going to say regulating short-term vacation rentals unless you are grandfathered in. And Crystal River, for example, is grandfathered in because they had regulations prior to the date when the state legislature said you can no longer regulate short-term rentals. So there are some things that we can do. Some examples are we can regulate things such as parking, noise. We can require them to register. We can't, do much more than there's some little things that we can do, and I think the board is going to look at some of those things to try to make them fit better into the neighborhoods where we know they already are.
I have a question for her while she's speaking on that. When you say noise, obviously I'm in real estate, so this is a very big deal for us. It's, I'll tell you that a lot of the real estate transactions that happen in this county are happening because of vacation rentals, just so you know. So if you try and close that down, you're gonna lose a lot of transactions. But when you say noise, some of the things that I'm learning about in other areas, and we can regulate that noise specifically, does that mean like you can regulate it with monitors? Because I know in some other areas that I'm selling real estate in, they're vacation rentals, but they're required to keep a monitor, a decibel monitor on the property. I'm not sure whether it's in or out or how that works. But when you say monitor, are we allowed to, like, is that what type of noise monitoring we're allowed to do? Or you could create a law for that, or I'm just curious.
Yes, I haven't heard that specifically, but that's a very interesting concept that I'll certainly speak with the commissioners about and research as to whether or not we can do that. And I'd love to hear where that is so that I can look at their regulations
Okay, all right.
off record.
Correct.
And just, I want to say, I'm not trying to shut anything down by any means. I'm just asking the question because residents are coming to me and, basically, with people, they come in for the weekend and they bring
Yeah.
multiple vehicles, boats, everything, blocking the roadways. They can't get in and out of their own driveways. There are things that people are experiencing. I'm not saying shut it down. I understand a lot of people are making money this way. I get it. But
I think the board is, the commissioners that I've discussed it with are looking more, like you said, not to shut it down, but just to have some minor regulations to control some of that, the public safety, sanitation, things that are not going to stop them, but just, be good neighbors.
Yeah, we aren't allowed to shut it down anyway because of statute, so
Yeah,
we can't, we're preempted.
yeah, it's an issue.
any other discussion today, guys?
No, thank you.
You get
that a
very few
pause?
chances.
I own several Airbnbs, and I believe that the biggest problem that we have with the Airbnbs is the hosts themselves. They're not familiar with the law. They want to make their own law. They think they're a resident. I'm just the opposite. I don't allow trailers on any of my properties, and we screen everybody. But I can't say that for everybody that hosts. And I have bought, and I even have a place for sale in Black Diamond because I bought one and didn't know I couldn't do it there. So.
You should have had a different realtor.
All righty. Anybody else want to chime in on this topic?
Well, yeah, just there's a lot of absentee owner vacation rentals, just so you know. Like I'm dealing with some of them. They live in California. There's these AirDNA websites where you go on there and it will tell you the areas that are the most profitable, and people are just buying properties all over the country, and even out of the country, people from out of the country. So, to say that they don't know the areas is an understatement.
No, they don't know the rules of the area, the laws of the
The
area.
local rules, local.
Local.
Right, the area and the rules, correct.
Hillsborough County is completely different than here. They'll let you do anything there. But here we have some kind of a control.
And we should.
Agreed. Okay. Very good discussion. Thank you, Madam Attorney. Anybody else have anything today? All right, seeing nothing, meeting is adjourned.